Dead by Daylight Survivor Perks Explained Part 4 David King. This is the 4th video in a series I'm doing to help new players in the Dead by Daylight community to learn perks. So far we've already covered Meg Thomas, Dwight Fairfield, and Claudette Morel, and now we're moving on to our 4th survivor, David King, who was picked by you guys. A quick little fun fact about David King, his chapter release date is actually the same day as my birthday back in 2017. And for the longest time, I actually thought David and Huntress were the first DLC to come to Dead by Daylight. This is partially because they were the first DLC after console release of the game, which is when I started playing, so they are my first DLC of Dead by Daylight. But now Lullaby for the Dark is actually considered part of the base game since it was a free DLC back in the day. And another fun fact about David is he is currently Dead by Daylight's only canonically gay character. The developers confirmed this back in April of 2022. Now, David is not nearly as popular as the previous survivors we've covered in this series. According to Nightlight.gg, he ranks 24 out of the 47 current survivors and has a pick rate of 44.38%. So he's not unpopular, he's just not as popular as the survivors we've already covered in this series. Now, David's perks have been on a roller coaster in terms of their popularity. One used to be so popular it had over 50% pick rate among survivors, and it forced the developers to do an entire meta shakeup. But most of these are not considered meta, but one of them still manages to maintain itself within the meta. So let's see where they're at now. David's 3 perks are We're Gonna Live Forever, No Mither, and Dead Hard. Dead Hard is still the most popular of David's perks, ranking number 7 with a 12.8% pick rate, which might not seem a lot, but this is the perk that used to have over 50% pick rate. We're Gonna Live Forever ranks number 34 with a 3.1% pick rate, and No Mither is all the way down at 104 with a 0.62% pick rate. And when you see what these perks do, their rankings definitely make sense. Starting off with We're Gonna Live Forever, this perk received a nerf due to the amount of blood points survivors used to get for it. Similar to Barbecue and Chili's nerf, this was done because the developer said they didn't want players to be motivated by blood points. But how this perk currently works is when healing a survivor in the dying state, your healing speed is increased by 100%, and then that survivor then gains the endurance status for 10 seconds after being healed. Honestly, this is such an underrated perk to me. If you're an altruistic player, I definitely recommend this perk. I don't nearly use it enough, but when you get value out of this perk, it feels amazing. Obviously, it's easily countered by a killer just picking up a survivor, but if you find yourself with a killer who loves to slug, this is such an effective counter against it, especially when you pair it with Made for This. It's a slugger's worst nightmare. Well, maybe not worse, but it definitely makes that strategy more difficult to get off. Next, we're going over to No Mither. If you've ever gotten this perk in Chaos Shuffle, you probably hate it. If you're regularly part of a bully squad, you might love it. No Mither is the quintessential high risk, high reward perk of Dead by Daylight. So you suffer the broken status for the entire trial. This means you cannot be healed, but your pools of blood are suppressed, your grunts of pain are suppressed by 75%, your recovery speed is increased by 25%, and you can recover from the dying state as many times as you want before you bleed out. This is a hardcore perk. If you're not someone who can loop very well, you are going to have a miserable time with this perk. This perk doesn't have the lowest escape rate, but it is pretty down there at 25%. The most value I've seen survivors get with this perk is doing bully builds, so they'll pair it with something like Boiled Over and Unbreakable, because killers will waste so much time trying to hook them or keep downing them, which is an effective strategy if you're willing to sacrifice yourself for a Swift, because it really does put the killer in a hard position. They have to ask themselves, do you keep wasting time downing and trying to hook one survivor, or do you ignore this one survivor, hope you get the hook states before that survivor can make too much progress on generators? But as we can see, this isn't a super popular perk, so it's not creating too much of an issue of killers, but it's definitely annoying when you come across it. And then finally, we have Dead Hard. Now, this used to be the perk of Dead by Daylight. Like I said, it had over 50% pick rate, which means we are talking a minimum of 2 survivors in every lobby running this perk. And unsurprisingly, even after getting nerfed back to back, I think it got nerfed 3 times. I know it was at least 2, but it still maintained a spot in the meta. How it currently works is after being unhooked either by yourself or another survivor, and while running and injured, you can press the ability button to get endurance status for half a second, and then this perk deactivates for the rest of the game. It's honestly so sad seeing Dead Hard in such a sorry state, and I'm genuinely surprised it's still a top 10 perk, because requiring 1 hook state to be injured and then to be doing something else to use a perk once personally is not worth it. It makes me wish I had appreciated Dead Hard back in its heyday, because back then I really didn't have an interest in it, and now I'll never get to experience it. But the fact that it's been nerfed so heavily and is still highly picked shows how effective even that half a second of endurance can be for survivors. But those are David's 3 perks. Which one's your favorite? Is there a specific survivor you want to see covered next in the series? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so I can bring you more Dead by Daylight content.